So, what is up, everyone? Lately, I have been thinking a lot about quitting. No, not. Alright, that doesn't even sound right. Not quitting drawing, but just the idea of quitting, and in particular, when it is important to quit. Or when is it okay to quit? Is it ever okay to quit? On this channel, I have done some things and experimented with opposites. For example, slowing down to get better progress. And then the exact opposite of that, speeding up, drawing faster and seeing progress there. And I've also talked a lot about pushing through and finishing and getting over frustration and continuing on. And maybe there is an opposite to this as well. The opposite to continuing on and pushing through. Maybe sometimes it's okay to quit and give up on something, a course, a lesson, an idea. Is it ever okay to quit? And is quitting things just as necessary to your art progress as pushing through things? And more importantly, when do you know the difference? But before I get into some of that, let me talk about what you are seeing on the screen here. If you have seen the previous video, that was the underdrawing for what I'm about to ink here, or I'm currently inking. And the idea behind this is I'm taking this image from the pencil underdrawing, doing the inking, and in the next video, I'm going to be putting alcohol markers over this. Now, I have been doing a lot of experimenting in the background that you haven't seen as yet because I haven't done another sketchbook type tour, but I have been experimenting with inking as well as, well, at least cross-hatching, and starting to get into alcohol markers. I was a little bit afraid going into this inking cross-hatching process and almost decided to leave it at just the level of the outline, but decided to give it a go anyway, push through the fairs. And I was actually pretty delighted with how it turned out. If my alcohol marker video turns out and with an end result as good as this one, I would be really impressed with how things went. So basically what you will see here in this video on the screen is that I outline the main shapes first, and then I go back in adding line weights and cross-hatching. And the idea and the thought process behind the line weights is basically one, of course, to outline the figure a little bit where necessary, but also using it to bring forms forward. So if there's a hand in front of the body, put an extra line weight on the hand, and that makes it pop or separate from the body and really makes it very apparent that the hand is in front of the body. So that's kind of the thought process behind what's going on with the line weights there. So the next one after this is done will be the alcohol markers. If you want to see that video, feel free to subscribe, follow my journey, and wish me luck as I go through these different experiments and as I learn what I can moving forward. So back to this topic of quitting and why it has been something that I have been thinking about more recently. If you watched the previous video, I talked a little bit about some of the challenges I was facing currently with time and everything that's being done. Speaking of challenges, even last night we had a DR cutover test at 2 a.m. in the morning, which ran for a couple of hours. So, I mean, it's just right now for me, it's just nuts, all right? But I'm making do. I'm making do with the time I do have. But this has caused me to, first of all, hit the pause button on the Drawbox course. And this is for several reasons. One, I already mentioned the time challenge that I'm currently in, and Drawbox is kind of a grind. But also because I actually started reviewing the videos and the lesson page for lesson 6, which I am currently on. And at this stage in the lesson, they are moving slightly in a even more technical direction, I should say, than what it was before. So now, in this lesson, you begin to move away from freehand drawing. You are encouraged, and I actually went ahead and bought the guides, ellipse guide, a French curve guide, so you're not drawing freehand ellipses anymore, you're not drawing freehand curves, you're not drawing freehand lines, you're using rulers. And there is a more push towards accuracy, being as accurate as possible, and focusing on everyday items currently for construction. Things that I am not as interested in. I am not interested in technical drawing. It's something I really want to get away from. That makes it sound a little bit harsh. Probably more harsh than it actually is, right? It's just something I am not interested in. I am not interested in being that technical of an artist. And so I've made a decision to hit the pause button on it due to the time constraints that I have. Not calling it quitting, but it's got me thinking about this idea of quitting things. And one of the things about quitting is that we all have a challenge in common, is that we only have 24 hours in a day. And for me, being a hobbyist artist, that a lot of that time is taken up with work priorities, family priorities. And I think a part of seeing progress could possibly be knowing what to quit and knowing what to push through. So someone once said about quitting is that you should really try to quit fast and often. But when should you quit? They kind of gave a brief statement saying you should quit not because something is hard, but because it sucks. And that's very vague. So let's see if we can dig into that a little bit. In my thinking about it, you have to ask yourself this first question. Where am I trying to reach? What am I trying to achieve? Am I trying to become, from my example that I shared earlier with Drawbox, am I trying to become a technical artist? Am I trying to become a figurative artist? If you've been following my channel, you know that the thing I love drawing the most is figurative studies. And so that's what you would see largely me cover. But what type of artist do you want to be? Do you want to be a comic artist? Do you want to be a painter? And then once you know the direction you're headed in, you need to start asking yourself, is the course I'm taking, is the practice I'm doing leading me in a direction that ends up at my goal? All right. So I've listened to quite a bit of Stephen Zapata's videos, and he outlines it pretty clearly if you listen to a lot of his videos. The point he's making is you don't just practice fundamentals and then somehow magically, once you've done enough fundamentals, know how to draw from imagination. You don't do reference studies and formal classical training on accuracy and then all of a sudden be able to know how to draw comics like Jim Lee. Like, that's not how it works. You actually get better at doing the things that you practice. So if you practice a lot of fundamentals, if you practice only fundamentals, if you practice only image studies and academic drawings, that is what you're going to be good at. And he said that he's seen a lot of artists go through the process, go through the schools, do all the academic work, and in the end, they still cannot create the art that they want to create. And he says it, and it sounds very self-evident, is that you need to be practicing the thing that you want to do, at least the thing that you think you want to do in the moment. At minimum, you'll find out that the thing that you thought you wanted to do is something you don't want to do at all, which is probably also a good thing to find out sooner than later than spending all your time on it. So when do you quit? It seems that, first of all, I'm going to say two things about this. First, you should, what I've outlined just now, you should quit if it's clear that the practice that you're doing, what you're spending your time on, is not going to lead you in the direction you want to go, towards the goal that you want to go to. And so, for me as a figurative artist or hobbyist, I probably shouldn't be spending my time doing a whole lot of courses on how to draw cars and landscapes. Especially if I have a limited amount of time, right? And I think this is kind of a situation I'm finding myself in with Drawbox. Because right now, this lesson is on everyday objects. The final lesson is on vehicles. Now, there are some pretty cool things to learn in those lessons because as I said, I went through the first page of lesson 6, which I'm currently on. And there are some pretty cool things about perspective still to be learned. And so I haven't given up on the idea of going back to Drawbox and completing it. But as I said, I've just hit the pause button because I realize with the time that I have right now, I'm not making the best use of my time by heading in that more technical direction. So in a sense, it is a quit, but not really an official quit, because down the road, I'll probably try to get some of those fun things in as well, maybe. But there's another reason why I think thinking about when to quit is important. And it's something Seth Godin talks a little bit about in his book, The Dip. Talks a lot about it, actually. Because what tends to happen a lot of times too when we think about quitting, and this in this case it's the bad type of quitting, is that people tend to quit at the wrong time. And so this is how he sets up the idea about quitting at the wrong time in his book, The Dip. So he points out that almost everything that you start is exciting in the beginning, and everybody celebrates and cheers with you at the beginning. So, I'm getting married. Yay! We throw a party for you, right? Engagement party. I mean, you haven't done anything yet. All the hard work of marriage is still ahead of you. But you're engaged, let's throw a party. Oh, I'm going to college. I'm going to study medicine. Wow, that's amazing. Let's celebrate this. You haven't... all the hard work is still ahead of you. So there is normally great excitement when starting a hobby, starting a project, starting a new job. There's always high enthusiasm, and then you go into the dip, right? And things get hard and you get demotivated. And normally what happens if you're able to push through it is that you begin to learn from the hard experiences, you begin to see progress. And as you begin to see progress, your motivation starts going back up and you start coming back up out of the dip. Now, I know this is true for me. You've heard a lot of talk about and a lot of videos, if you look through my past videos, talking about my frustration in the beginning parts of my journey. I mean, even with tears, right? Actual tears. It's kind of strange how a hobby can make you cry. Maybe not you, but it did for me. But there was a low point, right? And I somehow pushed through with the help of some of the instructors in the Proco site. They helped me push through, and now I'm seeing improvement. I'm seeing progress, and the more progress I see, the more my motivation goes up, right? What will I see next? What improvement will happen next? My motivation is going up, and I am coming out of that dip I was in, out of that place of frustration and depression. But what Seth Godin points out is that what normally happens is that at that very lowest point in the dip, that's when people tend to quit. And this is the worst time to quit because you're quitting right before you begin to see the improvement that you worked so hard for. And he points out that this is true not only of things like I'm talking about with drawing, but it's true also of people who decide to become physically active. And so you go to the gym for 2 weeks, you're on your diet for 2 weeks, and it's hard. And right before you're about to begin to see real progress, you say, it's too hard, I haven't seen any results, and give up. This is quitting at the wrong time. You're quitting right before you're about to see results. And then we have people walking around, it never worked for me, and so it won't work for you. And even for this Drawbox course that I'm hitting the pause button on, I can say from experience, and I actually have, even still in the comments, recommended Drawbox to persons. Because the portions that I did go through, it was extremely helpful for me. And so I know that there is a lot of good learning in there. And you do need to push through at some times if something is hard, if you see how it's still related to what your end goal is. Don't be tempted to give up at the bottom of the dip though. Because at the bottom of the dip, at the time when you are most frustrated, that's actually the time that you're about to see the results and you're about to start coming up out of the dip. And so when do people give up on their personal training? Not on day one. I mean, some people do. In that case, they would be following the quit fast, quit early, quit often mantra, which isn't even as bad. It isn't even as bad if you quit early. So if you're quitting on day one, that's not as bad because you haven't you haven't sunk your time. You don't have that sunk cost in there, right? You haven't really given up anything for this. So in that sense, almost quitting early is still not too bad. But if you're at the point where you're already frustrated, you've already put weeks into this, you may want to think about whether it's time to quit or whether it's time to push through to see the results. The results may be closer than you think. Now, talking in real timelines, the frustration I went through was for several weeks. At least 2 months. I don't remember the exact amount offhand right now. But there were a good amount of weeks where I struggled and asked myself numerous times, why am I doing this? And if you're looking for help, one of the things that I did find was accountability. Knowing that I had one, paid for the Proco course, and two, that the instructors were waiting to see some response from me. And so I pushed through. And I'm glad I did. So, what I want to know is, what are your thoughts on this? I've given my thoughts. Are you in a point where you're currently frustrated? You feel like you're at the bottom of the dip? Or have you pushed through frustration and have probably some advice for those of us who may be a little less motivated, probably a little bit more frustrated, probably at the bottom of the dip, trying to get out? What are the things that you use to give you hope, to get you motivated through that low period when you weren't seeing the results that you thought you should? And so with all of that, encouraging you to do just two things here. One, if you feel like you want to quit, ask yourself the question, is this something that is just hard that I need to push through? Like, is this really leading me towards my goal, and I just need to stick it out and push through? Or is this something leading me away from my goal, and it's really something I need to quit now and make better use of my time? If it's the latter, I think you quit. I think if you don't have the time, that's when you quit. You go, this isn't directly leading towards my end goal. It is fun, it is exciting, it does provide that challenging stimulus, but it's not taking me in the direction I want to go, and I don't have the time for exploration in that area right now. I think you quit. Let me know in the comments if you agree with this. But for me, it's hitting the pause button on Dropbox for now and continuing it with the things that I actually enjoy, things that I think are headed in the direction that I want to go with my art. And then secondly, ask yourself if it is possible that you may just be at the bottom of the dip, the low point in the motivation. And it's likely that if you are at that point, that you are closer to seeing results than you feel you are. Because most of the times the results come in jumps. They don't come gradually. You're going to be struggling, and all of a sudden something clicks. Like, you will hear me, if you have followed my draw a box videos especially, you will have heard me say this over and over again. You struggle through it, you persist, and then at some point it's almost like a light bulb goes off and it just makes sense. I've had this happen in the Proco course as well. So if you are in that spot, I'd encourage you to push through and see what happens. So again, I hope this helped someone think about quitting in a slightly different way, hopefully a more helpful way. And I hope you join me next time when I'll be doing the alcohol markers over the top of this. And again, basically sharing my journey as I learn to draw and I explore this world of art as my hobby. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video. Bye.